Hey, good evening. Welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. I did a video that went into my own interest in writing stories and how I arrived at some of my conclusions about how writers manage to draw their readers into a story. And the idea of a short story always fascinated me. And I remember that let me see, who was it? Hemingway, one of the, let's face it, one of the heavies in the world of literature. Hemingway wrote a short story, and the short story was Baby Boots, brand new, for sale, never worn. That's it. Baby boots, brand new, for sale, never worn. Well, think about it. One of the things that a writer has to come to terms with is getting rejections. And some of the rejections, some people with their dry sense of humour, which I love, will keep those rejections. One person that I heard of had so many, he actually papered the wall of his little study area with the rejections and used to laugh at them and smile at them and realise that they only took him one closer to success. Such was his confidence in himself, which you actually need to be a writer, because when you're a writer, your work, where you are in your work, is in total isolation. And when you're in total isolation, you draw from the inside, from your inner resources. And your inner resources will be the sum total of all of your wins and loses in your life, and what you have read that other great writers, if you got any sense, what other great writers have written, and some of their experiences. And like we said in the last video on this subject, there is nothing new under the sun. I didn't know that was a quotation from the Bible, but someone wrote to me and told me what the full quotation was. I don't have it in front of me, so I can't avail you of it. But anyway, one of the books that I read in my journey through trying to write a book that could reach, this is in the old days. Nowadays you don't have to grovel at the feet of the traditional publishers. You can actually go ahead, especially since they invented Kindle, and you can go ahead, as I have done, and you can go on the belief that what you have written is worth reading, and go to the trouble of having it edited or editing it yourself and making it into a format which will be acceptable to Amazon.com. And you can put your book up for sale, or books, as I have done, and you can put them up and sell them. And they'll be sold for a pitiful amount of money, but which actually will pay you more per book than a traditional book deal in many cases. So one of the books that I read, which was really good, it was A Writer's Guide to Staying Out of the Rejection Pile, and it went on the this is on the cover. It was called The First 5 Pages, and the first 5 pages was written by a man called Noah Lukeman. All right, so it's got these little bullets here. It says, avoid common manuscript errors. Attract the attention of agents and editors. Take your writing to a higher level. So he's talking about the first 5 pages as being the first 5 pages of the manuscript that you offer to a, let me say, largely disinterested publisher. They have what I'll call writers, or used to, whether they have it now I don't know. But anyway, they used to have readers who would read through those manuscripts that they were instructed were going to be read. Now, I have a brilliant writer friend in the UK who has written and published about 15 books, and he has sent manuscripts in, let's face it, a yellow manila envelope, which have been returned to him unopened, with the note, "We do not accept unsolicited manuscripts. Sorry." And the sorry was a huge emotional pat on the back for him. But what attracted me to this particular book was the dry humour, incredibly dry humour, that was on the first page. And it was a rejection letter from a Chinese publisher for Louis Zukowski's A, a book apparently called A, which I never read. And never heard of, actually, if I'm perfectly honest. But listen to this for a rejection letter. "Most Honourable Sir, we perused your manuscript with boundless delight, and we hurry to swear by our ancestors we have never read any other that equals its mastery. Were we to publish your work, we could never presume again on our public and name to print books of a standard not up to yours. For we cannot imagine that the next 10,000 years will offer its ectype." I'll have to look that word up in the dictionary, ectype. "We must therefore refuse your work that shines, as it were, in the sky, and beg you 1,000 times to pardon our fault, which impairs but our own affairs." And it's signed the publishers. I think that that's wonderful. "Were we to publish your work, we could never presume again on our public and name to print books of a standard not up to yours. For we cannot imagine that the next 10,000 years will offer its ectype. We must therefore refuse your work that shines as it were in the sky, and beg you 1,000 times to pardon our fault." It drips of dry humour, if there could be such a contradiction. But I thought that was wonderful. And that's from a Chinese publisher. From a Chinese publisher. So wonderful. So, I wonder why writers are so driven by what they do, by the thoughts that they have in their mind, as to undergo willingly this ritual degradation that they go through when they send this baby which they have been working on for so long. Some people, I think Catch-22, Joseph Heller worked on that for many years. And another book which became a classic and a favourite of mine, I think, was East of Eden. And East of Eden, it was two books that John Steinbeck wrote, East of Eden or The Grapes of Wrath, or if you're American, The Grapes of Wrath. Well, one of those books actually was two books, and I'm going to take a chance and say it was East of Eden. And that was a book which was so brilliant to me, I just couldn't stop reading it. You know, when people write a book, it's not just their passion that that book will be read, it's their passion, their hope, their fervent wish and desire that it will be read many times. And what I find about John Steinbeck's work and Joseph Heller's, secondary to John Steinbeck, I must say, is that you can open the book and you can pick a page and you will find what amounts to like a cameo of immaculate literature, where it just captures the moment that it's describing and can bring a tear to your eye. Now, I listened to a radio program once and they were talking about some writer, and they actually thought it was quite funny, but he said that what the writer was quoted as saying at some point or other, that if what he wrote didn't make him laugh or cry, then it was no good. It wasn't working. And the people on the talk show, the radio show, thought this was a little bit quirky or funny. But if you think about it, if what you're writing doesn't move you, how can you expect it to move anybody else? Now, you're going to reach, whatever the book, whatever the story, you're going to reach a particular kind of audience, and that audience will stay with you in much the same way that a viewer will choose a channel and stay with a channel. And depending on the subject content of any channel, they will make their choice on the basis of certain characteristics of their own. So the channel almost has to mirror image what they themselves either would like to be like or consider that they are like. Now, our channel is, Beth and I run a channel that is what we call a feel-good channel, and so because of that we get rid of contradictions or accusations or criticisms which are not pleasantly put. Now, we have extremely clever subscribers who are able to pen a beautifully crafted comment to the point that intellectually they are searching, delving into the reasons for things, and they do it beautifully. Now, they may do it beautifully in opposition to my own feelings, so do I say, oh, not having that, no, I'm not having that, it's a bit too clever for me. No, we don't do that. The beautiful work is beautiful work, and we leave it up. So the only kind of thing that we get rid of is where someone obviously has just said a load of crap, you know, and has a vocabulary which is about probably 37 and a half. So what are you trying to do when you write a story? What are you trying to do when you tell a story? My brother, they're gone now, but my sister and my brother were both talkers. Why are you not surprised to hear that? My sister told things in real time, and my brother told things in magic time. And the way that I always used to think of my brother is that he would tell a story and it would be so magical that you almost couldn't wait to get home so that you could tell it as well. And here's the rub. It always felt like his story, he gave you his story and he put it into a bucket like it was water, and he filled the bucket with his story, and his story was the water in the bucket, and you raced home as quick as you could, and you carried the bucket with the story in it, and when you got home you took the water and you used it to retell this story. What you didn't know was that somehow there was a hole in the bucket, and even though my brother had filled the bucket with his story, and that it was so magical that it just filled you with joy and admiration, or sadness, or sorrow, or being melancholy, all kinds of different emotions which he could evoke simply by his storytelling technique. It somehow leaked out, and you didn't have enough material when you got home to put the magic into the story. It would come out the bare bones. My sister wasn't like that. She told things in real life, in real time. So everything, if the thing had taken an hour and a half to unfold, it took an hour and a half for her to tell it. Till in the end, you would be there, and you'd be propping your eyes up like this and saying, "Oh God, please." And she would go and she would say, "Well, it happened on Tuesday. I can tell you this. It happened on Tuesday." No, it wasn't Tuesday. It was Wednesday. And it was Wednesday in the morning. Was it the morning or the afternoon? No, it was the afternoon. And I'll tell you why it was the afternoon. It was on a Wednesday in the afternoon because the milkman was late on that day. And the milkman, Harry, he's a lovely man. And he comes and he always says hello. And anyway, he arrived that day late. And it was terrible. When I was angry at first, but then Harry said, "Look, I'm really sorry that I'm late. But what happened was, in the morning, this morning, I literally, she would be going, 'Oh, kill me now.'" Unlike my brother, who was the magical storyteller that just filled you. You just, if it was a fun one, you couldn't stop laughing. If it was sad, you would be trying to hide the tears. And that's the joy of being a storyteller. He could not do other than to tell a story that was magical. He couldn't do other than that. And he was a man who, materially speaking, didn't have very much. He spent the last of his days as a plumber, and he used to install sprinkler systems, and he used to go all over the country and do that. And he always brought back these stories of challenging times with how he had handled very difficult people. And he used to tell them, and they would be so funny that you just wished you were him. Now that's the greatest compliment, of course, that anybody can pay you, is that I was sorry when I reached the end. And a nice compliment which I had, which I think I mentioned in my last video, but then that's the thing about getting old. You keep repeating yourself. And that was that the person said, I read all of the stories in your book, and each story was my favorite until I read the next, and then that became my favorite. So that's the kind of response that you are really looking for. Of course, it doesn't always come. Some people will never like what you do. They'll either dislike you, or they'll just dislike the subjects that you go for. Some people like horror movies. Me, I like movies which make me feel good, which glorify the human spirit. And that's the kind of movie that I go for. And I remember making that decision a long time ago when I saw a movie which horrified me for a couple of days. I just didn't feel good for a couple of days, thinking about the images that this movie had put into my mind. And I thought, I won't ever do that again. Now, can you imagine that there is such a thing in what a writer will write that could influence you in that way. Just to end off, I will tell you of a time in Florida where there was a group called the Children's Advocacy Center, and I read an article in the paper, which I think it was the news for the Fort Myers area, and in it the writer told of a visit to the Children's Advocacy Center, and he said, in those doors come the children, broken, beaten, molested, abused, and they are helped. And it went on more than that, but the way that he put it just made me want to help. And I got in touch with the Advocacy Centre, and at that time I had a workshop, an art studio workshop, where I did commissioned artworks. I designed and made furniture and stuff like that. And I used to do quite a bit of reliefs for companies, where I would do a three-dimensional relief where the painting actually came off, because it was three-dimensional. It was made in wood, and the tree would actually come off the surface of the painting. And I got in touch with them and I said, I'd like to, they were, oh, I've missed a bit, they were opening a new centre, and it was going to be bigger, better facilities, more able to help. And I said, for your new centre, I would like to donate a piece of artwork. And I told them what I did. And they invited me along, and I took along my portfolio and of the work that I'd done, and explained who I was and so on. And they liked my work and said, yes, we would love to have that. So I was going to donate that. And while I was there, this lady said, would you like to see this centre, this old centre? And she took me round and she showed me the old centre. And bearing in mind the kind of writing that had brought me there, I saw children, I saw women with children, and it was evident that some of them were going through a rough time and others were doing okay. So the full spectrum. But during that time I walked with this lady along a particular corridor, not a huge thing, maybe 10 feet long, that's all, it's very short. But along one wall were small frames which were about this big. Think of that as, look at the size of it, think of that as a picture frame. And behind the glass of that picture frame, and there were many, and they were different sizes, but most of them were all about that size. And there were no pictures in these picture frames. All that it had was a name and an age. So it said Timothy Jones 3, Harry 4, Angela 2.5. And I said, why would you do that? What are these children? And she said, these are the children that we were not able to save. That was a tough one for me. And it was a description, it was a way of putting over an emotion that was very, very powerful. What can you say when you're told that, and you look at all of these names, little girls, little boys that were just abused until they couldn't take it anymore and they passed. And maybe what they were here on earth to do would be to make the rest of us feel that there was work to be done. And I never forgot that. Well, evidently I didn't, because I'm telling you about it, aren't I? But I never forgot that. It had a huge impact on me. And so when I got here, and I've rambled again because we were talking about writing stories, but then maybe we're all writing a story of our lives by living that story. If you ask anybody, so what have you lived? What have you done? They will tell you their story. Some are very good at telling their story and possibly become writers so that other people may learn from their mistakes. I often read stories that people have written to me just about their lives. This happened to me. I did this, then this was done to me. I suffered that. I recovered. I have not yet recovered. I'm happy. I'm sad. I feel stronger. I'm devastated. All of these things that people are living, and they're living their story. So we are all, in one sense and another, we're all writers, and we're all writing our story. I guess perhaps I'm led to finish by saying the way that we write our future is by living as well as we can in the present, irrespective of the pain and the heartbreak of the past. Just because something happened in the past does not mean that it's going to happen again. So, this is a foreigner in the Philippines. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to subscribe Foreigner's Wife in the Philippines. God bless and sweet dream.
Now, did you see my lips move? Of course you didn't. That's part of my story. Bye for now.